and welcome back to It's Not a Sport. This video has been a long time coming. Normally, I end off the year with a year review or game of the year video, and I haven't done that yet, so here we are. We're going to be talking about my game of the year. So, let's get into it with some honorable mentions real fast. Two games that I discovered this year that I wouldn't count on this list because they didn't release in 2023 would be Lost Ark and Azure Lane. I really enjoyed Lost Ark for the beginning of the year. It was my go-to game for the beginning of the year, and I really grinded out that game, and it's a great MMO. Now it's kind of having problems, but I still think it holds up, and if you're looking for a new MMO to hop into, Lost Ark is your game. I've done previous videos about it, and you can check that out right up in the corner. Azure Lane as well has kind of been a gacha game that has surprised me this year. I really liked learning about the history of battleships, and that's what really drew me to the game among other things. And I think it's very player friendly for a gacha game. So those are my two honorable mentions. And then I want to talk about anime real quick. These two animes I think stood out for me. The first one being Cyberpunk 2077 Edge Runner. It really revamped Cyberpunk as a game and just got me hyped for the DLC that is to come real soon. And it was just such a well produced anime, and with its storytelling and its visual and its animation style and just how they used the soundtrack of the game that I didn't even know existed when I played the game back in 2020. So definitely a win for there. And then Chainsaw Man was super anticipated. I read the mangas, I already knew what was going to happen, and I think they blew it out of the water as well. So now, with the honorable mentions and anime out of the way, let's get into Game of the Year, starting with Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Let's talk about it. It's one of the few games I played for 2022, and I loved Xenoblade Chronicles 2. It was one of my favorite games on the Switch back in 2018. I really liked the combat of that game, the story of that game, and it really surprised me as a JRPG of the modern, era of JRPGs. So when Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was announced, I was really happy to see that the game got another sequel and excited to play it. It came out in July of 2022, and I didn't start playing it till maybe September-ish or so, around Thanksgiving. And let's just say the game was, I want to say, like, mediocre disappointment for me, which are very harsh words, I think, to give out to a game. I generally don't give that, like, those words to any game, like, ever. And I want to say this because I think just JRPGs now are very difficult to play. It's kind of a genre that I think has really aged out of the mainstream gaming scene, and unless like the JRPGs are made by Square Enix or Atlas, who are the people who make Final Fantasy and Persona, they just don't really hold up to modern standards. So let's start with the positives first of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I really liked how the story started out. I really liked the story overall. I thought the story was strong. It's world building. I think all the Xenoblade games have strong world building, and that's probably like their biggest point. The soundtrack as well is fantastic and just a joy to listen to, and just how they mix the old tracks from 1 and 2 into the 3, because 3 is really just tying in both the first game and the second game into kind of its own universe sort of ordeal. But where I think the story elements and the plot and music and the artistic creative design of the game is its positives, its gameplay and system design is where the game starts to fall apart. It just becomes very, very, very boring really fast. And it's just has to do with this gameplay loop where you're kind of walking to point A to point B, and then you are over leveled the majority of the time, which being over leveled in RPGs is generally a good thing. It's something you want, but in this game they actually punish you for being over leveled because you have to switch classes for each character, and you can't level up the class. You can unlock it, but then to use the class you have to level it up and then level it up again. But even to like level up the class so characters can use it, you have to be able to farm enemies your level. And since you're over leveled the majority of the game, you just don't get to experience half of the classes that they designed for characters, which is kind of huge because the classes replaced what one was with the blades. So then you don't get to experience a lot of the combat. And the combat itself is extremely boring. It's just waiting for abilities to come off cooldown that don't feel impactful, that don't feel rewarding, and just some of the cooldowns are just really, really long. Like you'll never reach them for some of those special abilities, like that you unlock later in the game, and it's just waiting for your chain attack gauge to be filled, so then you can finally do damage to the boss. A lot of the bosses are just meat sponges. They don't have mechanics. Only really the final boss has mechanics. So you're just kind of sitting there just like whacking at it, and a lot of the times I found myself just putting the controller down and looking at my phone and just letting them auto attack the entire time because the bosses have so much HP and the abilities in combat don't feel engaging. I was just bored. So with that, like eventually I just turned it down to easy, the difficulty to easy. I was originally playing on normal just to get the game going a little bit faster. So combat was a huge negative for me, as well as just, getting to point A to point B. It was just like walk here, cutscene, walk here, fight, walk here, cutscene. And then on top of that, then you get into some of the systems. And I already mentioned how like the class system works and how you have to level up. And a lot of the menuing and systems are just, again, tedious. They just seem more work that needs to put in. You need to collect a shit ton of items to unlock these gems, and it's just not well designed on the gameplay front, and that's why the game was really disappointing to me. It's probably my least favorite game that I've played in 2020. But anyway, that's Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Let's move on to the next game that I'll be talking about. Alright, and coming in at our third spot is Vampire Survivors. This small indie game came out of nowhere and kind of took the internet by storm. It was something that was at its core so basic, but provided such a fantastic viewing experience and gameplay experience. And it was challenging to boot, and it was a game that required the player to play again and again and again to improve. It was a new take on roguelikes, and it was only about $3 when it came out. It released fully later this year, and I have yet to play that update, but they kept updating it, they kept designing it and adding new levels, new weapons, new characters, and new ways for you to really customize your gameplay experience. And then once you get to the point in the game where it just kind of becomes a auto player where the game just plays itself, it becomes very, very memorizing. I just thought Vampire Survivor was just, it goes to show that no matter how bad AAA gaming gets or has been within the last, couple years, and we get releases that are just disappointments overall, and you can think of whatever latest release that may be, there are still small indie games that just raise the bar in terms of development, and that's what really matters, and those are the games that we need to start looking out for and start experiencing more. So if you haven't played Vampire Survivor yet, I definitely recommend you go ahead and pick it up. It's real cheap on Steam. I'm pretty sure it's also free, included in the Xbox Game Pass. So if you have Xbox Game Pass, you can play it there. It is a really just unique experience that I wish I could experience again if I could go back in time and replay it. And number 2 on our list of games of the year, or games to play, is God of War Ragnarok. I already talked about this game very in depth in the God of War Ragnarok thoughts video. I'll put a link to that. But God of War Ragnarok, now that I've also had a lot of time to sit with it, it is probably the best casual game to come out in 2022. If you're looking just for a very linear, relaxing, epic kind of journey experience where it's just, it's kind of just like you're playing a movie, God of War Ragnarok is the game for you. It definitely deserves its spot up there. It was very well made, and it was a great continuation of God of War 2018. So I'm not going to talk too much about this game because I did it all in that video, but its story is great, its music is great, its combat, it can be fun, but at the same time for me frustrating. And overall, it's just a very good experience if you're looking for something very linear, easy, and straightforward. And finally, my game of the year. It's not a sports game of the year. Comes at no surprise, Elden Ring. I didn't talk about Elden Ring really at all on this channel or in any previous posts, but Elden Ring was by far my favorite game to play. I loved all the bosses. I loved the world building. I'm a huge Berserk fan. I'm a huge From Software fan. And just how they did Elden Ring and how it accomplished what it went out to accomplish was amazing. Everyone was talking about Elden Ring. Everyone was playing Elden Ring when it came out. None of the other games on the list really grabbed the gaming world as much as Elden Ring did. We're to the point that my friends who never played a From Software game picked up Elden Ring and played it for the first time. 2 of my friends did that. Did they beat it? No. The game won. And that in itself is fantastic. But Elden Ring, just what these people did, From Software did, in creating such an open world and taking the Dark Souls formula and just spinning it into a big RPG open world experience where every nook and cranny of the map was rewarding to explore, where all the bosses were engaging, where the lore was interesting, and we still have more to come with DLC, and they update it in PvP DLC, and they're still updating the game, is fantastic. So Elden Ring is a must play for this year. If there's any game out of this list that I think you have to play, it would be Elden Ring. So definitely go check that one out and give it a play. It will be difficult, it will be hard, maybe it's not up your alley at all, but being able to persevere and climb the mountain that is a FromSoft game and finally beat, the final boss is so satisfying. And then you'll want to do it all over again. Anyway, this has been the Game of the Year video of It's Not a Sport. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It will really help me out. Let me hear your Game of the Year. If you have any other small indie games, or if you liked any other games on the list that you rank them above my list, please let me know in the comment section below. I would love to start a conversation about that. Anyway, this has been your host, Salty Waffles, signing off, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful climb.